Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Body Cam. So what Body Cam's essentially about is we center on this police department in Louisiana, and basically they are now reeling from this event that has taken place where a police officer has gone too far. He's ended up killing this young kid who was black in this like hit and run of sorts, and basically now we focus on Mary J. Blige's character, and she basically has to do what she can to try to cover this up, but she also is starting to become haunted by the victim of this cover-up, and now she basically, the victim of this tragedy, and so basically now she feels very conflicted as to what she really wants to do. So, Body Cam overall, I really didn't know too much going into this. Apparently, this was yet another movie that was supposed to come into theaters, allegedly, but I didn't see any trailers for it, no marketing, nothing. So I have to assume this is another one of those films that was just kind of shelved for a while and didn't have a release date, but they figured, hey, we need some content out there. Let's put out Body Cam, from Paramount and things like that, which was kind of a stupid decision because Paramount's really been struggling lately, but whatever. They put it out, and again, I didn't really have too many expectations. I figured I'd check it out, though, because it is a major release, and I'm trying to review as many movies as I possibly can, considering that there's a very limited amount right now. So I checked it out, and look, Body Cam is a film that I do think has a lot of great ideas behind it. I think there's definitely a lot of things that this film wants to say. I just don't think personally it did it in the most satisfying way. This is a film where I just feel could have been so much more if they would have dived more heavily into some areas, but we're just getting to right now. Now, the one thing I can absolutely give this film is the acting here. I think most of the acting here is really good for sure. I think everyone does do a really good job. Mary J. Blige is an actress that I've enjoyed for quite a while. I think she's one of those actresses that really just doesn't get the credit that she truly does deserve, aside from Mudbound, which I was very happy to see she got like a supporting nomination for, but I think she always does deliver. And I will say this, while I do think this performance is significantly weaker than some of her others, I do still think she does do a solid job here. I was overall impressed by this performance. The character she's playing is far more composed. She's a lot more quiet and kind of stoic in that way. She doesn't react much to things, and I thought overall she definitely did do a solid job here. I thought she did carry this movie pretty well. And Nat Wolff as well, who plays the rookie in this film that she is accompanying here, I thought he also did a really good job. The two of them actually did have a really nice dynamic there, and I think even when the film was struggling, that was definitely a highlight of the film. I thought those two bounced off each other quite nicely, and I was overall impressed by them. As far as the rest of the cast, I mean, they overall do a pretty good job. Anika Noni Rose, for what she has here, is really good in this movie, I thought. You really do feel her, because she really is the, she's the mother that is, has lost her son, and she's really kind of, she's feeling very erratic, she's feeling very vengeful, and you really do feel that throughout this movie. I thought overall she definitely did do a really good job here, and everyone else I thought was pretty good. The acting is definitely not the problem here for the most part. What is the issue, I think, is the directing and the writing. And here's the thing when it comes to the directing. Malik Vitthal's directing, I'm pretty sure this is a directorial debut, and it really does show. Now, I will say, I do like right off the bat that he is trying to do a lot here. The film is clearly trying to be both a social commentary on police brutality and, Black Lives Matter and things like that, and kind of showing, subverting your typical cop drama, but it also is trying to be a full-on horror film in that way, something that's a little bit more surreal, something that's a little bit more out there. And I don't don't think the issue is that these two things just don't clash very well at all. I just don't think the vision was quite as unique as it really should have been. I feel like the horror element especially, there was so much more that Vitthal could have really done in terms of directing, and I don't really think he plays up on that very well. The film isn't really that scary, I think, really at all, and I think it really is held back by his directing here. I just found it to be pretty weak. It felt like he had an idea, but he just didn't really have that specific sort of tone that I think this film really did need, and I think that's definitely what does bring it down here. The writing as well, I just don't think is really that interesting, and that's really my biggest issue with this film. It's not so much that I think that the film is doing too much, because I really don't think it is at all. I've seen many films that try to kind of be a hybrid of two genres and have pulled that off very successfully. I mean, look at, say, Get Out, for example. That's the perfect blend of comedy and horror, and it blends those two things very nicely. You know, same with Us last year. That was a comedy and a horror. Look at, say, Black Klansman. That's both a comedy but also trying to be sort of a political drama, and it does a good job with both of those. The problem with body cam isn't that it's doing too much. That's not my issue at all. My issue is that the way that it's done is not very interesting, really at all to me, and I think it's mainly because of just how basic this story really ends up being. And especially when you look at what the story could have been, I feel like there's far more potential here. Most of the film, we're following Mary J. Blige and Nat Wolff, and them trying to do what they can to delete this footage, them doing what they can to protect the reputation and integrity of, you know, the police department and things like that. And, you know, every so often, Mary J. Blige will be haunted by the son, also because she also has lost a son. But again, none of this is done in a very exciting way, and I think that's really what kind of brings this down, and I don't really think that needed to be the case. I feel like Mary J. Blige's character especially had a ton of potential here because she's going through a very similar sort of situation to Anika Noni Rose in this movie. She's also lost a son that was very young, and this has also affected her, you can tell. And so I really do feel they could have really drawn a parallel there. I really do feel they could have dived a little bit deeper into the relationship she had with her son. Same with Anika Noni Rose. They could have really kind of shown a contrast there, but they don't really do that. It's all just kind of talked about, and I really would have wanted to have seen it. I feel like if they would have inserted some flashbacks of Mary J. Blige and her son, and then also Anika Noni Rose and her son, I feel like it would have been that much more effective, because while you totally understand why she feels so conflicted, it just doesn't feel like it's as prominent as it should be. It also doesn't help that the main character in this movie, she doesn't really react to things that often. You know, she is very emotionally aloof in that way. Her introduction especially, she's just kind of, you know, trying to be a good cop, and that's really all she's trying to be. There isn't really that much else to her besides that, and that was very disappointing to me because I just kept thinking, that is such an obvious thing to do. You have two mothers here, both of which are grieving. Why not try to dive into that a little bit more? Why is that so half-assed in this movie? And especially the fact that the film is clearly trying to touch upon, you know, police brutality and, you know, all of these very, you know, all of these, you know, crimes that happen involving policemen and people of color, that what they are, you know, wrongfully accused of, or if they're wrongfully killed. That's something the film clearly wants to dive into, but the problem is they just don't fully dive into it. And I think that's another thing that really does bring it down. It also doesn't help the Nat Wolff's character in this movie, despite the fact that I do think he gave a really good performance here, is honestly a complete bore. There's really nothing to him aside from he's the rookie and he's more inexperienced and he's going along with Mary J. Blige for the ride and he's there to comfort her when she needs it. And other than that, there's not really that much else to him. There's a point in this movie where he's really not in it that much, and it honestly kind of made me feel like you don't maybe even really need him here. He doesn't really have that much of a place in this movie other than he's just the other guy that's with her, and I just didn't really see the point of him. I feel like there were places you could have taken that character, maybe have them, clash a bit as to how they feel about this issue, but they don't really do that at all. And so again, the way the story is done just is not very interesting. And after a while, it just kind of becomes a very cliche sort of police drama. It gets into how corrupt some of the force is and how there are some people here that just need to be brought to justice. But then they also try to use the horror as a way to just have all of these jump scares. And they're not necessarily bad jump scares, but they're just not particularly scary. They don't really do anything that exciting with it. There is a really good scene at a convenience store that I actually did like quite a bit. But other than that, I just didn't really feel like the horror was that well utilized here either. I just really found this story to be very by the numbers, and especially the way it wrapped up. It was so fucking predictable the way things went. I could literally say beat for beat everything that was going to happen in this movie before it happened. There really was nothing that was that surprising to me, and I feel like with a film like this, they really could have done something much more unique and different with it, and they really did not do that here, and I think that's something that really brings it down. I really did think like maybe halfway through there was going to be some kind of a twist as to what's going on. Why aren't they showing us the footage? But pretty much once they actually show you the footage, it is again so predictable. It's almost like, why did you hold off showing this from us? Why didn't you just show it from the start? Because they kind of were acting like there was some sort of mystery there when there really wasn't at all. It was fairly obvious what was going on, and I just don't think the film did a very good job with that either. So again, I just feel like there's so much more that this could have been. They had so many opportunities to tell a very interesting kind of story, and they just really didn't hear it all, and it just really annoyed me after a while. The cinematography in this movie, I think, was actually pretty good. I do think that there were, especially a lot of the horror scenes, they definitely do not hold back. The film can get pretty grisly at points, but even at that, I don't really feel like they went for it as much as they could have. I feel like they could have maybe had more dynamic cinematography there. The score is fine, I guess, and the editing. I don't think this film is paced that badly. I was never necessarily bored with this film, but I just found it to be very uninteresting in that way. And I think in terms of editing, I do think the film needed to take a bit more time in developing Mary J. Blige's character. There's a very quick introduction with us, kind of in an exposition type of scene, learning who she is, why she's signed up for this, and it just doesn't tell me enough about her. I needed more to these characters. I needed more to this story. And that's ultimately what I can say about Body Cam, is that I just needed more to it. I feel like there's just so much more you could have done with this story. There's so much more you could have done with these characters. There's so much more you could have touched upon involving these, social issues that the film wants to touch upon. There's so much more you could have dived into involving Anika Noni Rose's character. It just overall there's so much more you could have done on the horror side of things. There's just overall so much more you could have done with Body Cam, and at the end of the day, it just ends up being largely forgettable because of that, because it doesn't really do all that much. It doesn't really take advantage of the things that I think it really could have. And so because of that, there just isn't really a lot that this film did for me at the end of the day. And it does have a really good performance from Mary J. Blige and Nat Wolff. But other than that, there really just isn't that much to this movie for me. It really is one of those films where I'm just constantly going to think about how much better it really could have been. So overall, I am going to give Body Cam a C. But over, guys, to my review of Body Cam. Let me know what you guys saw this movie overall. Left your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.